Good afternoon, all the students. Today we are going to discuss some of the important introductory concepts related to C++. We'll start our discussion by differentiating the C and C++ programming, and then we'll differentiate the object-oriented programming with procedure-oriented programming, and then we'll see some of the basic concepts of object-oriented programming. Right. So this is our agenda for today. Please give me 1 minute of time. So these are the differences between C and C++. Remember, students, that the differences between C and C++ almost appears to be same as that of the differences between object-oriented programming and procedure-oriented programming. Why? Because we know that C follows which object program paradigm that the C follows. Yesterday we have a great discussion, right?
Procedure-oriented.
It is procedure-oriented programming. And what about this C++? It follows
Object-oriented programming.
object-oriented programming. That is the reason why the differences between C and C++ almost remains the same as that of procedure-oriented programming and object-oriented. So the first difference we are going to discuss is C is a procedure-oriented programming language. This is what we have discussed in the earlier classes also. So, and similarly, C++ follows the object-oriented programming, right? And here the C follows the top-down approach, whereas the C++ follows the bottom-up approach. So what do you mean by top-down approach? You might have studied in the C programming language in the last semester. Is it right or not? So we have a topic in first unit which is called top-down approach. Top-down approach means a large task is divided into subtasks like this, and again the subtasks can be divided into many more subtasks, and then you get the solution like this, right? But bottom-up approach is a reverse process where you will find the solutions of the smallest problems, and then you come so that you get the solution to the top at one top level, and then you combine the solutions of the problem sets which are in the same level to get the solution for the original problem, right? So this is how the C++ follows, right? So it starts with very basic level where it will get a solution for the basic subproblem, and then it combines the solutions and it goes to the top level, right? So this is the difference between the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. Similarly, C is less secure than C++. This is very important. Similarly, C++ is more secure than C. Right? Why? Because the C++ has a concept called as data hiding. What do you understand by the term data hiding?
Inheritance.
It's not inheritance. Right? First of all, tell me what do you mean by data hiding?
Simply hiding the data.
Yeah, we are going to hide the data. Right? In C, what happens here is the data will move freely throughout the program. But in C++, we won't allow the data to freely move around the program. That means we won't allow the data to be accessed by other parts of the program. Right. Giving a simple example, do we have a concept called as global variables in C? Have you heard of this term,
Yes,
global
sir.
variable?
Yes, sir.
Yes, global variables are the variables which are accessed throughout the program, right? So any function, it can access it and it can manipulate it, right? So the global variables does not have any protection. They can be accessed by any function in the program and they can modify it accordingly, right? So the global variables does not provide any security. What do you mean by global variable? What is that we are storing inside the variables? For example, I have the variable int a. I can store a value, integer variable, a value inside. Is it right or not? A is equal to 10 means 10 is assigned to A. That means we are storing the value of 10 inside A. And if I make it as global, if I make it this A variable as global, then this particular variable can be accessed by any function. Is it right or not?
Yes, sir.
And they can modify it accordingly. They can one function may change this value of A from 10 to 20, and another function they may change the value of A from 20 to 50. Like that, there is no security for the data. That is the major disadvantage of the C programming language. It does not provide any security for the data. The data is free to move around the program and any function can access it and any function can modify it. But while you consider the C++, the data is very much secured in C++. Why? Because in C++ we use a concept called as data hiding, which is called as class, right? In class we will describe some data members and then you describe some functions. So what does a class consist of? These are the class concept we will discuss in the coming slides also. But for this point of time, you remember that the class consists of a group of data and a set of functions. What does a class consist of?
A group of data and set of functions.
A group of data and set of functions, right? So what happens here is that data what we are declaring inside this class is very much secure. How can you say that it is secure, sir? Why? Because we won't allow the data that is declared inside the class. Listen carefully. We won't allow the data that is declared inside the class to be accessed by other functions of other class. Right? So we will allow only that we will allow this data to be accessed by only the functions declared inside the class, right? So whatever functions we declare inside this class, they can only access this data, right? So we are restricting the data. We are not allowing the data to move freely around the. Important to provide the security, right? So in C++, we consider that the C++ is more secure than C. The reason is C++ supports the concept of data hiding, where we will hide the data. So how we are going to hide the data means we will declare the data inside the class and we will allow that particular data to be accessed by only accessed by the functions which are declared inside that class only. Did you get this point? This is very important, right? The first two points, nothing to explain, right? C follows the procedure-oriented programming and C++ follows object-oriented programming. This everybody knows, right? And it is C follows the top-down approach and then C++ follows bottom approach. But the third point is very much important, where I'm saying that C is less secure and C++ is more secure. The reason is C++ supports the concept of data hiding, where you will hide the data inside the class and you will make that data to be accessed by the functions which are declared inside that class only, right? So any function that is outside of this class will not access it. So we are protecting the data. So we say that C++ is secure. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. And the fourth point is a very simple point. When you declare the variables inside C programming, at what point you will declare?
Beginning of the program.
It's not beginning of the program, it's the beginning of any function, right? You can say like this. Beginning of program is also correct, but the variable declaration in C programming is possible only at the top of the function. That means whenever you declare a function like this, f is my function, So the first statement should be the declaration statement, int a comma b. So this is called the declaration statement. So if you declare this statement somewhere else in the function, so we have some n number of lines in the function. Now if you try to declare a variable called int x, this type of declaration is not allowed in the C programming language. Right? Whenever you want to declare a new variable after writing n number of lines, so you have written some n number of lines. Now you got you want to have one more variable called x. So it does not allow you to declare in this statement, at 101 statement. What you have to do is you have to go back to the first line here, and then you have to make necessary modifications such that you declare a variable there, right? So that is one of the disadvantages of C program. But in C++, variable declaration can be done anywhere in the program. This is important, right? So there is no restriction that variables should always be declared at the beginning of the function only. C++ is free. It is free. It is giving the free hands to the programmer, saying that you can declare variables anywhere in the program. Let us take the same example. We have a function f, and we have some variables int a comma b, and we have written some 100 number of lines. And now you require one variable to be declared, int x. Yes, you can declare a variable like this. This is perfectly accepted in C++. So this is one more advantage we have in C++ when compared to that of C. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. And one more point is in C, namespace feature is not available. But in C++, the namespace feature is available. Namespace means, what do you understand by the term namespace? Any guess on this one? Namespace. Anybody? What do you understand by the term namespace? If you know, you please tell me. You just give some answer. Otherwise, you say that I don't know. Nothing wrong in it, right? So, what do you understand by the term namespace?
I have no idea, sir.
Okay. So, what this namespace specifies is it specifies the scope of variables. Do you know the term called scope? Have you ever heard of this term scope in C?
Yes, sir.
Scope. Here I have written SCOP, scope of a variable.
Type of function.
Have you studied the concept of storage classes in C?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What does a storage class specify?
It specifies the extent of accessibility of a variable.
The storage class specifies the scope and lifetime. Right. So the scope is, it specifies the region. Scope specifies the region. So the region up to which the variable can be accessed is called as the scope of the variable. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So we'll make use of storage classes to describe the scope of the variable, right? We have 4 storage classes, that is auto, static, extern, and register. So based upon the storage class, the type of the storage class, we have different scopes for different variables, right? Similarly, we have one more concept called namespace that is available in C++. So it specifies the scope of variables. So you can, I will tell you the example with example also, but when time comes, right? Don't worry. So you can declare a namespace. We have some syntax that we will discuss it later. We can declare a namespace, and we can declare some variables. And we can declare some variables. So whenever you declare a variable in this particular namespace, this variable can be accessed, or it has the scope within this namespace only. Is it clear? For example, I
Yes,
declare a
sir.
name. I declare a namespace 1 like this, and I have a variable integer a in this namespace. So where I can access this a within space like this, namespace 2, and I declare a variable like this, int a. Can we declare a like this? Can a program have two variables with same names? Is it allowed in C?
No, sir.
No, it is not allowed. But you can declare it with different scopes, right? Within different functions, you can declare variables with the same names. In the same way, this is namespace 1 where I am declaring an integer variable a, and this is namespace 2, I am declaring an integer variable a. This is perfectly valid, right? Why? Because these variables may have the same name, but the scope of these variables differs from one another, right? The scope of this a is within namespace 2, and the scope of this a is within namespace 1. We'll have some clear idea on this particular concept namespace. A brief idea we'll discuss. We'll have it when we discuss the concept of namespace. Don't worry about it. Right. But right now you remember that there is a concept called as namespace in C++, which is not supported in C. What does a namespace mean? Means a namespace specifies the scope of the variable. Right. Is it clear?
Yes.
Right. So under what category the C comes? Is it a low level language or assembly level language or high level language? Yesterday we have a brief discussion on these types of programming languages. We have three types of programming languages. One is the low level language, which we call it as machine level or binary language. And the second category is assembly language. Now please mute yourself. And the second category is the assembly language, and the third category is the high level language. In general, while we discuss the concepts of C programming language, we'll simply say that it is a high level language. But actually, the C is a middle level language. What do you mean by high level language? Can anybody give me the actual meaning of high level language? Anybody there? What do you mean by high level language? Please respond. Abhi. Can you hear my voice?
It doesn't depend on particular type of computer, sir. To write a program.
Jyoti, Madhurya, please respond. What do you mean by high level language?
It doesn't
High-level
depend
programming
on,
language.
yes, sir, it doesn't depend on type of computer when we write the program. This is meant by high level language, I think, sir.
No, that's not the actual meaning of the high level language. The meaning of high level language. So we differentiate the two programming languages, low level language and high level language. Then it will be very clear, right? So we have two persons, right? We have two entities. 1 minute. We have two entities. One is the computer, and another one is the end user, right? So if a programming language is easily understandable by the computer, then that language is called as low level language, right? So if a programming language is easily understandable by the computer, we call it as the low level language. Now tell me, what do you mean by high level language?
Which is understandable to users.
Right. So high level languages are those languages which are easily understandable by the user. Is it clear? So there is a simple difference between the low level language and high level language. If the language is easily understandable by the computer, they come under the category of low level language. And if the languages are easily understandable by the user, they will come under the category of high level language. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now let us look at what language is easily understandable by computer. Can anybody tell me? What does a computer understand?
Binary
Machine
language.
level language.
Super. It understands only binary language, right? So whatever you want to tell to the computer, you have to tell it in zeros and ones only. That is called as binary language. Right. So whenever you write the program in zeros and ones, then that language or that program language is called as binary language, and that is easily understandable by the computer. Now tell me, what is the language that is easily understandable by the user?
High level language.
Okay, the name is given as high level language, but what are the different languages that are easily understandable by the user? Can the user understand the Telugu language? Can he understand the Hindi language easily?
Yes, sir.
Right. Tamil.
Yes, sir.
Right. These are all languages called as natural language. Right. So these all are called as, we do not categorize it as high level language, but these are all the languages which are easily understandable by the user, and these are called as natural languages. But what is the language that is globally accepted?
English.
What is the language that is globally accepted?
You are now on mute.
English.
English.
English. So whenever you write something in the English language, that will be easily understandable by the user, right? So any programming language that supports its constructs written in the English language, those are called as high level language. Is it clear?
Clear, sir.
Right. So for example, if you take the constructs of C, what are the looping constructs we have? For, while, do while, right? What is that you will? What is the keyword that is used to break from the loop? Break. What is that we will use to continue to the next iteration? Continue. What are the constructs we have for switching? If, if else,
If else, else.
switch case, right? Files. So all these are English terms only, right? All these are terms that are related to English. Is it clear or not?
Yes, sir.
So the C programming language makes use of the English words, right? So that is the reason why we call the C programming language, or we categorize the C programming language into high level language. In general, we will call it as high level language only. But since it does not support the English language to full extent, we categorize the C programming language as the middle level language. But C++ is a high level language. That means we will write the programs using the English words. Just give me 1 minute of time. So C++ is a high level language. Next, coming to the next point, in C programs, the programs are divided into modules, right? So we can call the C programming language as the modular programming language. We can also call the C programming as modular programming language, right? The reason is we can divide the programs in the C programming language into different modules and the functions, right? That's the reason why we call it as module. But in C++, the programs are divided into classes and functions. These are the new terms. Class is a new term which we come across in the object-oriented program, right? So what is that? We'll divide the C programs into, modules, right? And in C++, we divide the programs into number of classes and functions, right? Now coming to the next point, C does not support the exception handling. We have the last concept as exception handling, the 5th unit, right? We'll see what this exception is and what are the various types of exceptions we have. What are user defined exceptions and how do you handle those exceptions? But right now you keep it in mind that exception is nothing but a runtime error. It is simply an error, right? So do we get any errors in the program?
Yes, sir.
Do we get any errors in the program? Please speak loudly.
Yes, sir.
So what type of errors we have in C?
Syntax error, functions error.
Yeah, we have syntax errors, right? We have logical errors. We have syntax errors and logical errors. But we have another type of error which is called as runtime error. And that runtime error is called as exception. What is that one called? It is called as exception. So C does not have any concept to handle the runtime errors. That means it does not have any concepts to handle the exceptions. And then C++, coming to the C++, it supports exception handling. This is very important concept in object-oriented programming, right? So we have exceptions which are called as runtime errors, and we have some constructs or some tools which can handle these exceptions. The C++ is having the facility to handle the exception. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what are the input and output functions in C? What is the standard input function we have?
Yeah.
Scanf, printf.
What is the standard input function we have in C?
Scanf, printf.
Scanf is the standard input function and printf is the standard output function. Right. And we have some standard input and output functions. We have some standard input and output functions in C++. The standard input function is cin and the standard output function is cout, right? And we have some operators like this. What is that operator we use for cin?
Less than symbols.
What is this operator we have here for C?
Less than.
Left shift, right shift.
It is right shift, right? And what is this operator?
Left shift.
It is left shift. So these operators are used for this standard input and output. We'll see what these operators are, and we have a concept called as overloading concept. We'll see all those things, right? And coming to C programming language, we have one main function. What is the importance of main? What is the importance of main?
Functions are called through main function.
So you cannot write a C program without any main function. See, right, and you can call other functions through main, or you can call this main function through other functions also, right? This is how the C provides the flexibility. You can call other functions inside main, and you can call main inside other functions also. But in C++, you have a main function. You have a main function. This is very important point. Just concentrate. You have a main function that cannot be called through other functions, right? You cannot call the main function through other functions. We'll see all these things when we go through the programming concept. Program killing the it will be very easy, right? But remember that the main function cannot be called by other functions in C++, right? So what do you mean by dynamic memory allocation? Can anybody tell me what do you mean by dynamic memory allocation?
At the time of runtime, memory is allocated.
Memory allocation done at runtime is called as dynamic memory allocation. So for dynamic memory allocation, we should have some predefined functions which are called as malloc, calloc, realloc, and free. So these functions are used to allocate the memory dynamically. But in C++, also supports the dynamic memory allocation, right? But allocation and deallocation of memory is done by making use of operators, not by using the functions, right? So what are the operators that we use for allocation and deallocation of memory? For allocation, we will use a new operator, and for deallocation, we will use a delete operator. So these are the two operators that are used for allocation and deallocation of memory. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So let us have one quick recap of this C versus C++. C follows the procedure-oriented programming, whereas C++ follows the object-oriented programming. C follows the top-down approach, whereas C++ follows the bottom-up approach. C is less secure. Why? Because we don't concentrate on data. We always concentrate on writing the functions, right? So we allow data to be moved freely from one function to another function, and we won't put any restrictions on data to be modified by any other function, right? That is the reason why we say that C is less secure. But while considering the C++, C++ is more secure because it supports the concept of data hiding, where you will hide the data inside the class. The functions which are declared inside that class can only access the data. No other functions from outside the class cannot access that data. So we protect the data. Protection of data is a very important concept. We should not allow the data to be accessed by anyone. So that is supported by C++. Similarly, the next one is C programming. The declaration of variables is done as the first statement of any function. But in C++, the declaration can be done at any point in the program. And in C, namespace is not supported. In C++, namespace is supported. C is called as a middle level language and C++ is a high level language. We have seen what this low level language is and what this high level language is. Low level languages are the languages which are easily understandable by the computer, which is nothing but the binary language, and the languages which are easily understandable by the programmer are called as high level languages. So that follows the English language, right? Similarly, in C, the programs are divided into number of modules. That is the reason why we can call the C as modular programming language. But in C++, we divide the program into number of classes and functions. And in C, we don't have the concept of exception handling, where exception is nothing but an error. It is a runtime error. We don't have any we don't have any mechanisms to handle the runtime errors in C. But in C++, it has included one particular concept which is called as exception handling, where you can handle the exception, where we can handle the runtime errors. Right. Coming to next point, C, the input functions for C is scanf and the output function is printf. Similarly, we have standard input function in C++, which is cin followed by right shift operator, and we have the standard output function which is called as cout, which is followed by the left shift operator. Similarly, in C, the main function can be called by any other function, but in C++, we cannot call the main function through other functions. And the last point about this C versus C++ is for dynamic memory allocation, C programming makes use of the standard allocation functions such as malloc, calloc, realloc, and free. Whereas in C++, for allocation, we make use of an operator called new, NEW. And for deallocation of memory, we make use of an operator called delete. Remember that this new and delete are operators. So operators are used for allocation and deallocation of memory. Whereas in C, we will make use of functions concept. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So before going to the evaluation of C++, let us have a discussion on procedure-oriented programming versus object-oriented programming. As I told that this is almost similar to that of C and C++, right? But you can discuss it in two different topics. That's why we go through this procedure-oriented programming and then object-oriented programming. So in procedure-oriented programming, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In procedure-oriented programming, program is divided into small parts which are called as procedures. That is the reason why we call it as procedure-oriented programming. So procedures have other name which is called as functions, right? In object-oriented programming, the program is divided into small parts called objects. Right. In the previous slide, we have seen that in object-oriented in C++, we divide the program into classes. Right. Here we are saying that in object-oriented programming, program is divided into small parts called objects. So there is a relation between this class and object. We'll see when we discuss the original concepts of this object-oriented program. Right. So class and object, they have some relation that we'll discuss. We can say that object-oriented programming program is divided into small parts called objects or classes also. Nothing wrong in it, right? And coming to procedure-oriented programming, POP. What is the short form of POP? Procedure-oriented programming? It is POP, and the short form of object-oriented programming is OOP. Right. Procedure-oriented programming follows the top-down approach. We have seen this topic. What do you mean by top-down approach? A large task is divided into number of small pieces, and then you will find the solution. And object-oriented programming follows bottom-up approach. So you find the solution for the smallest piece, and then you combine it. You combine the solutions for the smallest pieces to get the ultimate solution. Right. And one more important point. This is important. Right. We don't have the concept of access specifier in POP. What do you understand by this term access specifier? Any guess on this one? Access specifier?
Anyone can access the files.
No. You just observe that term or observe that word and tell me what do you mean by access specifier. Right. I told you a simple technique. Whenever you have a new term, what you have to do is you have to go from the right hand side to the left hand side. Right. For example, I don't know what this object oriented programming is, but I know what objects are, what I know what orientation is, but I know what programming is. So if I want to describe this term, I can simply say that it is a programming aspect or programming paradigm which is oriented towards objects, right? That is what object-oriented programming. Similarly, if I want to describe the procedure-oriented programming, it is a programming aspect which is oriented towards procedures. Procedures are nothing but functions. Similarly, if I want to define IoT, Internet of Things, how can you define Internet of Things? Anybody? How can you define Internet of Things?
Things are interlinked with internet.
Super, right? So we have some things that are always interconnected via internet. This is called as Internet of Things. Now tell me what is access specifier. What is access specifier?
You are now unmuted.
Access on specified topics.
Your voice is so low, Amma.
Allows access on specified topics.
No. So access specifies it specifies the accessibility. How far we can access the data. How far we can access the data. So it is specifying how far we can access the data. So there is no concept of access specifier in the procedure-oriented programming, but in object-oriented programming, we have the concept of access specifiers where we have three different access specifiers, which is private, public, and protected. This is very important concept. You may get one simple question from this access specifiers. What are access specifiers and what are the three types of access specifiers that are supported by object-oriented programming? Right? What do you mean by access specifier?
Which specifies the accessibility of the program.
Super. It specifies the accessibility of the data. It specifies who can access the data. That is called as access specifier. What are the three types of access specifiers we have in C++ or object-oriented?
Private, public, protected.
Private, public, and protected. So each and everything will have some, it specifies some accessibility. Public means it can be accessed by anyone. Private means nobody can access it. Protected means only few members can access it. That is how these access specifiers are defined. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And adding new data and function is not that easy in a procedure-oriented programming. Yesterday, we have seen a real-time example of online inventory system of a vehicle parts manufacturing unit, right? So we have seen the differences between procedure-oriented programming and object-oriented programming. In procedure-oriented programming, whenever you want to add a new item, for example, we have three items. Yesterday, if you remember the concept, we have three entities. One is color, another one is
engine size. Engine
size and the transmission type.
Transmission type.
These three entities we have. But if I want to, and I have what are the classes I have? One is cars and another one is trucks. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I want, so this car, engine size and transmission type will be separate entities in the cars, and similarly the color, engine size and transmission type will be separate entities in the trucks also. So if I want to add one more thing, for example, number of passengers. If I want to add this data, what I have to do? I have to add this number of passengers to cars entity And similarly, I have to repeat the same thing. That means I have to add this number of passengers data to trucks. So we have to do the two things. The same thing has to be repeated twice, right? So it is not that easy to add data and functions in procedure-oriented programming. But in object-oriented programming, adding new data and function is very much easy. Why? What is the reason? What makes
Take
us,
it as vehicle class, sir.
yes, that what is the concept we are using, Amma?
Inheritance.
What is that one?
Inheritance.
Inheritance, right? So we have color, we have engine size and transmission type, and this is extended by cars and trucks. Now, if I want to add a new data, for example, number of passengers, I don't require to add this number of passengers to cars separately and trucks separately. Since the cars and trucks have been extended from the vehicle class, I just add this number of passengers to the vehicle. Thereby, it is automatically added to cars and trucks. So this is the advantage we have in object-oriented programming. So adding new data and functions is very easy in terms of object-oriented programming, whereas adding new data and function is not that easy in procedure-oriented programming. Is it clear?
Yes,
Right. So coming to the next point, procedure-oriented programming does not have any proper way to hide the data, and so it is less secure. This is what we discussed in the previous slide also, right? POP is less secure. Why? Because it does not provide any provision for hiding the data. The data is left free to move around the program. Anybody can access, anybody can modify. This should not happen. But in object-oriented programming, we restrict the data. We put a lot of restrictions on the data by making use of these access specifiers, public, private, and protected. What is this access specifier specify? It specifies who can access the data. If I specify the data as public, I am simply leaving the data, so anybody can access it. But if I want to make that particular data to be restricted, I don't want others to access it, so I will make it as private. And if I want the data to be accessed by very limited members, then I make it as protected. So by making use of these access specifiers, you can protect the data, or you can hide the data, and that's the reason why we call the object-oriented programming provides more security when compared to that of procedure-oriented programming. Is it clear?
yes,
Right. So in procedural programming, overloading is not possible. Overloading is another term, new term. So can anybody list out the new terms which we have discussed till now in object-oriented programming? New terms.
You are now unmuted.
Access specifier.
Super. Access specifiers. Okay. Next.
You are now unmuted.
What are these access specifiers we have?
Private,
Public.
public,
public,
protected.
private,
Private and protected. What is the other term? Any other terms we have? We heard of this. Oops.
secure.
Please be loud.
Exception
Overloading.
handling.
Super. Exception handling. Super. Any other terms? You are missing the basic terms. Here I am underlining it. What is this one?
Object.
Classes. And the fourth one is object. Right.
Objects.
And any other term, you just observe this slide. Any other term you are missing?
Hiding data is less secure.
Yeah, data hiding is another terminology you find in this one. So like this, we have so many concepts. So, but right now, till now, we have discussed, we know what these access specifiers are, and this exception handling, classes, objects, data hiding. We come across these terms. Just give me 1 minute of time, 1 second. Right. Now, what is the, can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now, what is the new term we have come across in this particular line?
Overloading.
Overload.
Overloading. Right. So we'll see what this overloading is, and remember that procedure-oriented programming does not support overloading, but in object-oriented programming, it is very powerful concept. Overloading is a very powerful concept. Right. We'll see all these things with a few examples, programming examples also. So what do you understand by the term overloading? Any guess on this one? Right. No worries. We by this term we can understand that we are going to overload some operators. Right. That means we will make use of the same operator to do different actions. Right. For example, what is this operator called? What is this operator?
Arithmetic operator.
Arithmetic operation.
Arithmetic addition, right? So you can make arithmetic operations, arithmetic additions. 10 plus 20 is equal 30. That you can do it. Similarly, you can add the floating point numbers also. But if I write like this, will it work? Object plus oriented. Will it work?
Yes, sir.
Object plus oriented. Does the plus operator work on strings or not?
Yes, sir.
No, in C programming, the plus does not support this type of things, right? So plus is intended to perform additions on either the integers or floating point numbers. But plus cannot be used between two strings. Object is one string and oriented is another string. So I want to concatenate these two things. If I write like this, object plus oriented, it won't concatenate. Why? Because the plus is intended to work only on integers and floating point numbers. It is not intended for adding two strings. But we can write some code, listen carefully, but we can write some code to make this plus work on strings also. This is called as overloading. Did you get the point? Overloading. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Clear, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So what we are doing here is we are taking the same plus operator. We know what this plus operator is used for. It is used for adding two integers or two floating point numbers. But we can write some code such that the plus can be used to add two strings. So that means we are loading it. We are overloading this plus. So we are making the plus to function more with more functionality, adding more functionality to plus. So that concept is called as overloading. So overloading is not supported in C, whereas it is a very powerful tool in C++ or in object-oriented program. Right. So in procedure programming, function is more important than data. Very, very important part. I told you, right? In procedure-oriented programming, we always concentrate on writing the functions, in writing the procedures. That is the reason why we call it as procedure-oriented programming. And we give very less priority to data. We don't put any restrictions on data. We just let it go around the program. Anybody can access, anybody can modify it. Right? So very less priority is given to data, but we only concentrate on how to write the function. But that is not the case in object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, more emphasis is given to data. More importance is given to data. Don't allow the data to move around the program. Don't allow it to be accessed by other functions. Don't allow it to be modified by other functions. So we put a lot of restrictions on the data. We protect the data. So more emphasis is given to data, and we give very less emphasis to function. So more emphasis on data rather than functions in OOP, and more emphasis on function rather than data in POP. Right. And coming to procedure-oriented programming, it is based on unreal world. This is what I told in the first class itself, right? So even though we have procedure-oriented programming, if somebody asks you what is the reason for moving to object-oriented programming, though we have this procedure-oriented programming, the thing is that procedure-oriented programming is best to model the unreal world. But whenever you want to model the real world objects, you need some extra concepts, you need some extra features like classes, objects, data hiding, overloading, exception handling. All these things are required. So all these new features are supported by object-oriented programming. Therefore, for designing or for modeling the real world problems, we need object-oriented programming. And here are the few examples which follow the procedure-oriented programming: the C, Fortran, Pascal, Basic, etc. And here are the few examples of programming languages that follow the object-oriented programming: C++, Java, Python, C#, etc. So most of the new languages, and most of the powerful languages, they follow the object-oriented programming. That is the strength of object-oriented programming. Right? Is it clear up to this point?
It's
Right. And last, we just have a recap of this procedure-oriented versus object-oriented programming. In procedure-oriented programming, programming is divided into functions, whereas in object-oriented programming, we divide the program into small objects called small parts called objects. POP follows top-down approach, and OOP follows bottom-up approach. POP does not support any access specifiers concept, but OOP, object-oriented programming, supports access specifiers like public, private, and protected, thereby protecting the data. Right? And adding new data and functions is not easy in procedure-oriented programming, whereas you can easily add the data and functions in the object-oriented programming. And procedure-oriented programming is less secure. Why? Because there is no concept of data hiding, and object-oriented programming is more secure because it supports the data hiding concept. In procedure-oriented programming, no concept of overloading is there. But object-oriented programming, there is a powerful tool called overloading, where we can overload the operators. Right. And in procedure-oriented programming, more emphasis is given to functions rather than data, which is not the actual real-world problem. Right? We cannot solve real-world problems if this is the case. And in object-oriented programming, more emphasis is given to data rather than functions. And the procedure-oriented programming is based on unreal world, whereas the object-oriented programming is based on real world. And the few examples of the programming languages that follow the procedure-oriented programming is C, Fortran, Pascal, Basic, etc. Whereas coming to object-oriented programming, we have C++, Java, Python, C#, etc. So these are the few differences between the procedure-oriented programming and object-oriented programming. Is it clear up to this point?
Clear, sir.
Right. So we'll end up here, and we'll meet on the next class. Just give me 1 minute of time so that I can take the attendance here. Right. Thank you, one and all. You can leave.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.